Good evening and welcome to Global Lens News. I'm Sadia Afzal. There was a time when the world believed globalization would erase political boundaries. Nations would compete in business, but cooperate in diplomacy. Trade would replace conflict, and economic interdependence would make wars less likely. But in 2026, that vision appears to be fading. Today, the rivalry between the United States and China has entered a new phase, one that is broader, deeper, and potentially more dangerous than anything seen in decades. This is no longer a trade dispute. It is no longer just about tariffs or import restrictions. It is about technology, military power, shipping routes, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, diplomacy, and ultimately, who will shape the future world order. The latest developments over the past few days make one thing clear. Washington and Beijing are no longer competing in one arena. They are competing everywhere. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi recently warned the United States to handle Taiwan with the utmost caution. On the surface, this may sound like routine diplomatic language. In reality, it carries enormous significance. For Beijing, Taiwan is not simply an island across the Taiwan Strait. It is considered an inseparable part of China and a matter of national sovereignty. For the United States, Taiwan has become one of the most strategically important partners in Asia, both because of its democratic system and because it produces the world's most advanced semiconductor chips. Every statement made by either side on Taiwan is now closely watched around the globe, because one mistake, one military incident, or one political miscalculation could trigger a crisis involving two nuclear powers. Unlike the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, this competition is far more complicated because both economies remain deeply connected. American companies rely on Chinese manufacturing while China continues to depend on international markets. Yet both sides are actively preparing for a future where that dependence may no longer exist. The evidence is everywhere. China is strengthening control over investments in advanced technology, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and semiconductor industries are now treated as matters of national security rather than ordinary business. Beijing wants to ensure that sensitive technologies remain under Chinese control and are protected from foreign influence. The United States is pursuing a similar strategy from the opposite direction. Washington continues restricting China's access to advanced semiconductor technology and high-end chip manufacturing equipment. These are not simple commercial decisions. Whoever dominates artificial intelligence will likely dominate economic growth, military innovation, and global influence over the coming decades. This explains why chips have become as strategically important today as oil was during the 20th century. Artificial intelligence is becoming the new battlefield. Military strength remains important, but economic power increasingly depends on technological leadership. Countries that control advanced computing, AI systems, cloud infrastructure, and next-generation communications will shape global finance, healthcare, defense, and education. China understands this reality. The United States understands it as well. That is why neither side is willing to slow down. At the same time, another competition is unfolding far from Silicon Valley or Beijing's technology park. President Donald Trump recently declared that the United States would not allow China to gain greater influence over the Panama Canal. For many viewers, this may seem surprising. Why would a canal thousands of kilometers away become a major geopolitical issue? The answer lies in global trade. Nearly every major economy depends on secure shipping routes. Whoever gains influence over ports, canals, and logistics hubs gains leverage over international commerce. China has spent years investing through the Belt and Road Initiative, financing ports, railways, and infrastructure projects across Asia, Africa, Latin America, and even parts of Europe. The United States increasingly sees many of these projects not simply as economic investments, but as strategic assets that could expand Beijing's global influence. This explains why competition is no longer limited to East Asia. It stretches from the Pacific Islands to Africa, from Central Asia to Latin America, and from the Arctic to the Indian Ocean. Even small island nations have become important pieces in this geopolitical contest. China has recently increased financial support and diplomatic engagement with Pacific Island countries, strengthening relationships in a region traditionally influenced by Western allies. For Beijing, every new partnership helps expand diplomatic influence. For Washington, maintaining long-standing alliances has become equally important. This competition is not always visible through military deployments. Often, it takes the form of development assistance, infrastructure financing, technology cooperation, and investment agreements. Power today is exercised as much through economies as through weapons. Meanwhile, China's economy presents another interesting contradiction. Its manufacturing sector has shown renewed strength, particularly in industries connected to artificial intelligence and advanced technology exports. High-tech manufacturing continues expanding despite slowing domestic consumption. This suggests that China's future economic strategy increasingly depends on innovation rather than low-cost manufacturing alone. Only a decade ago, the world often described China as the factory of the world. Today, China wants to become the lab. It wants to lead in electric vehicles, renewable energy, artificial intelligence, robotics, telecommunications, and advanced manufacturing. Whether it succeeds or not will influence the balance of global power for decades. At the same time, international financial institutions are gradually adjusting to China's changing status. The World Bank has indicated plans to phase out lending to China over the coming years, reflecting the view that China has evolved from a developing economy into one capable of financing much of its own development. This symbolizes a remarkable transformation. A country that once depended on international financial support now finances infrastructure projects across multiple continents. Such changes inevitably reshape international politics. The question many analysts are now asking is whether the world is entering a period of economic separation. Companies increasingly speak about diversifying supply chains. Governments encourage domestic manufacturing. Critical industries are returning home. Investment decisions are increasingly influenced by national security considerations rather than simple profitability. This process is often described as economic decoupling. Whether complete decoupling is possible remains uncertain because the American and Chinese economies remain deeply interconnected. However, selective decoupling in critical technologies is already happening. Artificial intelligence, semiconductors, cybersecurity, telecommunications, and rare earth minerals have become strategic sectors. Every policy announcement now carries geopolitical implications. For countries like Pakistan, India, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and many others, this rivalry creates both opportunities and challenges. Many nations do not want to choose sides. Instead, they seek balanced relations with both Washington and Beijing. They want Chinese investment while maintaining security partnerships with the United States. Managing this balance will become increasingly difficult if tensions continue rising. The world is gradually moving toward a more fragmented international system, where countries may find themselves navigating between competing technological standards, competing financial systems, and competing diplomatic alliances. Unlike the Cold War of the 20th century, this rivalry affects ordinary citizens in ways many people do not immediately recognize. The smartphone in your hand, the AI tools you use, the cars you drive, the medicines you receive, and even the digital payments you make are increasingly connected to geopolitical competition. The next global superpower will not simply be determined by the size of its military. It will be determined by who leads in artificial intelligence, who controls semiconductor technology, who secures critical supply chains, who builds trusted alliances, and who shapes the rules of tomorrow's digital economy. History often remembers wars that were fought with armies. The 21st century may instead be remembered for a contest fought with algorithms, microchips, satellites, data centers, and global influence. The rivalry between the United States and China is no longer a prediction about the future. It is the defining reality of the present. The question is no longer whether this new Cold War has begun. The real question is whether the world can manage this competition without allowing it to become an open conflict. Because if cooperation continues to shrink while confrontation continues to grow, the consequences will extend far beyond Washington and Beijing. They will affect every nation, every economy, and ultimately, every one of us. This is Sadia Afzal for Global Lens News.